that everybody has a chance to get logged in. We do have a special guest this morning that we're super excited to be chatting with. So we'll give you guys all about 2 more minutes to get logged in, and then we'll get started. I'll share my screen. Okay, hang on. I just lost my PowerPoint. I'm not sure what I did with it. All right, good morning, everybody. For those of you who are just now joining us, we're going to get started here in about 1 more minute. All right, it looks like it's 9:02 now, so we will go ahead and get started. So welcome back, everybody, to our summer teacher training sessions that have all been virtual every Tuesday this summer. We have already made it back to Block 4. We are in our first week of Block 4, and this week and next week is all going to be focused on specialty crops. So we talked to you already about natural resources, livestock, row crops, and now we are in our final block, all looking at row crops. And so today we have a special guest, and Natalie, before I play your video, I just wanted you to do a quick introduction of yourself. So everybody, we have Natalie Pratt here, and she's just going to do a quick introduction for us.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Natalie, Natalie Pratt. I'm 14 years old. I'll be a freshman at Amboy High School next year. And I grow popcorn. I have a business called Bubba Bug Popcorn. I've been doing it since I was about 5 years old. And we grow 4 different varieties of popcorn on our family farm in Northern Illinois. And that's just kind of my thing, is now I'm the popcorn girl.
All right. Yes. Awesome. So we are going to watch a video that Natalie put together. She's so great with her video making skills and has previously, I think it was last summer, did another video for us. So sit back and relax and let's learn a little bit about Bubba Bug Popcorn.
Welcome back to Grand Prairie Farm. Today we're going to be discussing everybody's favorite snack, popcorn. The kernel is the seed of the popcorn, and the seed of the popcorn is also the kernel that we pop to make popcorn. There are many different varieties of popcorn. Varieties can range from different colors to different shapes completely. On our farm, we grow 4 different types of popcorn: white holeless, strawberry popcorn, mini rainbow popcorn, and early pink popcorn. Popcorn will always pop white, no matter the kernel color. See, these kernels are multicolored, but once popped, will all be white. There are a couple things that need to happen before we start planting our popcorn patch.
The second thing would be to cultivate. Cultivating helps to level a seed bed, so the ground is fresh before planting seeds. Think of it like making the bed before you go to sleep. When planting seeds, you definitely need to plan ahead. To completely cultivate and spray an average field, it can take up to 5 hours.
For most farmers, planting includes machinery, like a planter, but for Bubba Bugs, we plant all of our popcorn by hand. Planting by hand is an effective method for Bubba Bug popcorn, but for larger corporations like Orville Redenbacher, planting by hand is very ineffective. The farmers that plant for them need big machinery, like planters and combines, to plant their thousands and thousands of acres of popcorn. seeds, and Mother Nature did the rest. Now, in early September, we'll be back out here to pick it all. Thank you, Illinois AgMAGs Classroom, for visiting Bubba Bug Popcorn.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing so we can all see each other. All right, that was an awesome video, Natalie. As always, you always just do such a great job. So you had a lot of information to give us. So normal people who are, or normal farmers who are planting popcorn, you said have lots and lots of acres. So how much room do you have, or how many acres do you have for your popcorn field?
Well, we just kind of round up. We have roughly about an acre of popcorn that we plant. And we can't really do much more since we do everything by hand. Like I said in the video, we plant by hand, we pick by hand, we do everything by hand. So more than an acre, and an acre is about a football field from sideline to sideline. It would probably take a lot of bit more work to plant more than an acre of our popcorn.
Oh, definitely. So you do plant by hand. How long does that take you guys? If you have a couple people helping, how long does that normally take you?
Well, about an hour. It's not that hard to plant the popcorn. It's mostly picking that can really get you for the amount that you have. But it only takes about an hour if you have 2-3 people just helping you.
Okay, that's awesome. So you also talked about you have 4 different varieties that you grow. Did you pick some of the more popular varieties to grow, or is that just popular in Illinois or in your area?
Well, we just kind of picked popcorn based on, I liked the colors of the rainbow popcorn when I was 5. And my brother just saw, I guess, a business aspect when he picked the white holus, because that is one of our more better selling popcorns. We sell it in a bag where you can just pop it in an air popper or a pan. So we just kind of picked it because we kind of thought that they looked nice. We had ideas for what we could market them as, like the strawberry popcorn we saw, and we figured we could market it as strawberry popcorn. So it's just kind of a bunch of different aspects. There's not really a more dominant aspect of that.
Okay. Now you did also say that, okay, once all the popcorn's popped, it's all white, and then the seed colors they have their own colors. So once they're popped, do they have different sizes or even flavors to them?
Well, unfortunately, no different flavors. That was one of our biggest questions when we started strawberry popcorn. It doesn't taste like strawberries. And no popcorn will taste different unless you put some kind of topping on it, some butter, salt. All popcorn tastes the same, just like all popcorn pops white, regardless of the seed color. And popcorn, once it's popped, will be different sizes. The white holus popcorn would be like your normal kind of popcorn, like a movie theater popcorn, without the butter, of course. That would be kind of the size of the white holus popcorn. And the rainbow popcorn, the early pink popcorn, and the strawberry popcorn is going to be a lot smaller because the kernels are a lot smaller. So what's inside of the kernel to pop won't be as big.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. I did not know that. I didn't think that it would taste like strawberry, but I thought, well, maybe it's got some sort of like maybe fruity, like tones or something. Awesome. Okay. So I know last summer we kind of talked about that, but we do have some new people attending. Where did you come up with the name Bubba Bug Popcorn?
Well, the name of Bubba Bug Popcorn, we started this business when I was 5 years old and my brother was 7. And per usual, we had nicknames. Mine was Natty Bug and my brother's was Bubba. So we went through all the names of Prat Popcorn, Kid Popcorn, but we ended up with, our dad picked the name Bubba Bug Popcorn because it combined both of our nicknames. And I don't think we can ever change it now because it's kind of just what we market it as, is Bubba Bug Popcorn.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I do want to invite, if anybody in our audience has any questions, if you just want to send those through the Q&A, we'd be happy to have Natalie answer those. I do have a few more questions in the meantime. So I want to go back to your marketing idea. So first of all, I've got a couple of questions. Where do you primarily sell your popcorn? And then how do you market? How do you have your name out there? How are you trying to expand your business? Because I know your brother was a big part of this and now he's off doing a lot of other things. So how does that all work?
Well, our main selling point is our website. We do have a website, bubbabugpopcorn.com. And that is where we mostly sell to, because we can proudly say that we are an international selling company. We've sold to Germany and the border of Canada. That would be definitely the main side of it. And we get our name out there from multiple places, from my mom's blog, Illinois Farm Girl, from just kind of talking to people, from doing things like this, our name gets out. And we just kind of had to figure out how to get our name out there and market ourselves as we grow popcorn and we know what we're doing.
That's awesome. All right. Looks like we do have a question okay. So Lisa wants to know, does one variety grow quicker than the others? Out of the 4 that you plant, do they have different growing seasons, or not seasons, but different growing rates?
So yes, our early pink popcorn is actually called early pink because it's early. It only takes about 60 days to germinate with the early pink popcorn. So it is tasseled right now and it's pollinating right now out there. So that will grow a lot quicker. The white holus popcorn takes a little bit longer, since the 90 days about for that to germinate. The white holus and the strawberry and rainbow popcorn can take like 84. Like, it's not that big of a difference for those. But the early pink popcorn gets its name because it germinates so quickly.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. So in the video, you also said that once you plant it, you just let Mother Nature take care of the rest. Do you have to, is there any sort of maintenance work that you have to go out with the soil or the field, or just the corn plants in general?
Well, we don't really do a lot, but we do spray for some bugs. So that's just how it is. Otherwise, bugs would completely take over our popcorn patch. So, and it doesn't harm the ears in any way. It's just normal kind of spray that we can put out there to help protect our popcorn plants. But other than that, we don't really do a lot because it's just completely up to Mother Nature. It would be kind of hard to take a bunch of watering cans out there and water an acre of popcorn twice a day. So if it's dry, we kind of let it be dry, and we pray that it'll rain. Or if it rains too much, we pray that our seeds didn't get washed away. And it's just a game you got to play when you do farming.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Especially with all the rain that we've been getting this season. Holy moly. That's been a lot. Well, Chris or Kevin, do you guys have any other questions? It looks like we have everything from the audience answered. All right. Well, Natalie, thank you so much. We are going to post the link for your Bubba Bug popcorn website on our blog post, so that we can make sure that we are helping with your marketing, and so that our people in our audience have a chance to get there and look and don't have to try to remember the URL and all of that. And then we are so excited because then in the fall, when harvest comes around, we also have your video from last year that we can share and talk about the other side. We've talked about planting right now today, and then we can talk about harvest here once harvest season comes up. So I don't think there's anything else. So Natalie, thank you so much. I think you've got a lot to do with the fair and all of that. So we will let you get going. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. All righty, let me get back to my slideshow. That was so fun. Okay. Let me see if I can remember how to share my screen now all of a sudden. Okay. All right. So to go along with our popcorn, let me get here. Okay, so we have a brand new popcorn lesson to go along with our popcorn activity and our specialty crops. This is called Popcorn Science. And as Natalie was talking about, how when the popcorn heats up and the sizes of the popcorn is going to be a little bit different based on the seed in the kernel. And that's because there's a little bit of water inside each kernel. And so when you hit a certain temperature, that's going to start to evaporate and burst the kernel. So our new popcorn science lesson is all focused on observing the different weights, the number of kernels, what it looks like when they're unpopped versus when it's popped. And so your students can, you'll give them all the same amount of popcorn kernels, and then they are measuring the weight of the jar, looking at the number of the kernels, and then looking at the weight. What do the kernels weigh, but using that that jar. So there's a little bit of math in there, and then some questions that ask them to look at the volume. And so it talks about what is volume, asking them to write in complete sentences, asking them to use their observations from their experiment, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a little fun activity to look in, well, what makes popcorn pop and what is volume and weight? So we got some popcorn science there. And of course, we have a couple of books. We have the Popcorn Astronauts, a lot of different little rhymes and poems in there. It's a very good book for elementary school. And then we have Popcorn Country, one of our favorite authors, Chris Peterson, very informational book about America's favorite snack. So we encourage you guys to check those out. And then Chris is going to take over for Ode to a Vegetable.
All right, thank you. Before I start talking about this specific lesson, I wanted to take a second and just talk about this idea of what is specialty crop. And so it's kind of a strange term when you think about it. Specialty crops are, any of the fresh foods that we eat on a regular basis would be technically considered specialty crops. And so it could be anything from green beans to storage crops like onions or winter squash. It could also be things like bedding plants that you use for landscaping, or cut flowers, or an assortment of all sorts of different things. We could even talk about specialty animals, which would be animals that are maybe less commonly grown, but are still used to produce meat and fiber and things like that. And so specialty crop production encompasses a wide variety of crops grown, not only here in Illinois, but also all over the country as well. And we're the leader in a couple of those specialty crops. And we'll kind of talk about a few of those here as we continue on here today. So this lesson I have is called Ode to a Vegetable. And so this is based off of this book by Alexandria Giardino, and it's called Ode to an Onion. And it's about an actual real life poet named Pablo Neruda. He was a Chilean poet, and he became known, he wrote a lot of poetry in his life, but he became known for this series of odes that he wrote. And so an ode is a traditional poem that originated in ancient Greece. It was meant to be performed aloud in public, and typically would have praised a person. And so Pablo Neruda kind of turned that on its side and decided he wanted to praise everyday ordinary objects. So he wrote hundreds of these odes to a variety of things, including multiple different specialty crops, including this one, Ode to an Onion. And so the book is a fictionalized version of how he got the inspiration to create his Ode to an Onion poem. And then at the back of the book, it's kind of a neat book, the way it's been published. There's onion skin paper at the beginning and end of the book. And then it also has his original poem, both in English and Spanish in the book here. And so I found that book last year and thought, how can we take a number of other poetic forms that students might be familiar with in their classrooms and ask them to write an ode to a vegetable? And so that's what this lesson does. And you can see two examples here on the screen that we came up with here. And so the first one is what's called an acrostic poem. And so you can see here, this is a poem about carrots. And so the first letter of each line spells out carrots. All right. And so that's what an acrostic poem is. The second poem there about a zucchini is what's called a color poem. And this is typically used as a way to introduce the idea of metaphor to students. And so you can see here this poem example, zucchini looks like, sounds like, smells like, tastes like. And so it's an assortment of different metaphors. And so again, we flip that on its side, and instead of writing about a color, we're asking students to write about a vegetable. In the lesson plan, we have 5 different examples of different poems that you can do, and you can do this with any number of poetic forms as well, in addition to the ones that we have in our lesson plan there as well. The nice thing about this lesson too is that it's a really interesting way to kind of sneak in some research with students. And so to be able to write these poems correctly, to write them well, they may need to actually research the fruit of the vegetable that they're writing about and learn more about it. And so it's a great way to bring in some biology and some science and some of that other information there to make, a poem, which normally you would think of as, kind of a cute thing that they could do some creative writing, but actually we're bringing in some nonfiction reading and nonfiction writing as well. We're just doing it in a slightly different way. And so we like this lesson to be able to do that, to not only have some fun writing about students' favorite or least favorite vegetables, but also brings in that research element there as well. So that's our Ode to a Vegetable lesson, again, based off of Alexandria Giardino's Ode to an Onion book.
Awesome. Yes, we love that. So our next activity is called Apple Pie Journey, and this is all based on the book How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World. And if you're familiar with that, or if you're not familiar with it, basically our main character is wanting to bake an apple pie, and she goes to the marketplace, but it's closed. And so she travels the world and takes different modes of transportation to different countries to gather the ingredients so that she can make this apple pie. So it's a really great book for students to be introduced to different countries, different geographical locations, different ingredients that are actually important to make a pie or an apple pie. And then it also talks about, when we know certain ingredients as their end product, well, what do they start as? And so is it the flower part? Is it the bark? Is it, the leaf? And so this is a really cool book that also introduces some of those topics as well. So our apple pie journey activity that pairs with this, it asks students to use a blank map, which we've provided, and for you to, as you're reading the story, so you would read it through one time, and then you can read it through a second time and have students mark on their maps and color in the different countries. And then also, you can create a compass, the north, south, east, and west, for them to, write out the directions. Where did she start, and in which direction did she go to get to that next location? And so then they can also write it out. So on the other student worksheet, it does ask you, it says, which countries did our main character visit? And then using your compass skills, navigate us through the route of your character or of the main character in the story. So it's asking them to use their directional skills to write the story. As the route. And then it's asking them, the last little part of this is to ask them to match the ingredients to the original source that product comes from. So, we have sugar, eggs, and so then you would do the corundu tree for sugar. The eggs, would come from the chicken. And so it's helping them identify that we have all these final products that we can go to the grocery store and easily buy, but where do they come from? What is their original source? And so that's our apple pie journey activity. And then we do have a couple other apple books that we just absolutely love. Applesauce Day is a fantastic book looking at making homemade applesauce. So something that you could definitely do in September time period, September and October. You could take your kiddos to an apple orchard, pick apples, make some applesauce. It's super easy. Or you could just bring in apples and make the applesauce yourself. We have Apples to Oregon. Awesome book taking you back to westward expansion and what families were doing when they were, traveling and moving, in unfamiliar terrain. And this family in particular has a couple wagons full of apples and other varieties of fruit. And, it's just their journey on bringing apples out west during that time period. So it's a fantastic book that you can start looking at different time periods and apple planting and westward expansion. And then the last book on the screen is called Bad Apple, A Tale of Friendship. And this would pair really nicely with any social emotional learning where you're looking at what it means to be friends. And when you have other people, saying things about friendship and, finding who you are and what you believe in friendship. And so it's such a heartwarming book. But that is our apple pie journey for our apples. We have lots of apple orchards here in Illinois and of course across the United States. And we also are super excited because not only do we have our apples and then our pumpkins, which we'll talk about more so next week, but we have a brand new apple and pumpkin poster. One side of the poster is all focused on apples and the other side is focused on pumpkins, which you guys will get in your boxes for the first 50 who sign up. We have provided one of those. We're super excited about that. So look forward to getting that.
I'll say too about apples here before I talk about shop local here. So we've talked about some supply chain related issues in the last few sessions we've done. Apples are a really great way for students to get introduced to that idea. You know, we're familiar with being able to go to an apple orchard in the fall and pick fresh apples. But when you think about the apples that we're eating right now in July, those apples were also picked last fall. And I think a lot of students and adults as well don't necessarily always recognize this idea that we have this controlled atmospheric storage that we can place apples into and store them for literally, close to a year, and they're still just as fresh as they were when we picked them. And so this lesson and just apples in general is a really good way to kind of let students understand this idea that food is seasonal, that if we need to be able to find ways to store it or be able to get it from other places where it is in season. And so that apple pie journey is a great way to think about that as well. Something is as classic as the stereotypical, all-American apple pie. It's actually a lot more complicated than that. It has ingredients from all over the world in it. And so again, another good way to talk about some supply chain things that maybe students aren't aware of. This slide here is a shop local. So this is a initiative with the Illinois Specialty Growers Association. So this is a group of farmers from across the state who grow specialty crops. And this is a way to find those farms near you. And so you can see the address up here at the top, specialtygrowers.org/shop local. The poster that Stephanie referenced, there's QR codes on that poster. When you get that, it'll take you directly to this link, and it's a way to search wherever you are, and you can identify specialty crop farms that are near you and get a better understanding of food that's being grown local to you. A couple book suggestions that go well with this idea of local and farmers market and things like that. We've got On the Farm and At the Market is a great book. We've done a few different things with that over the last year. And this is a newer book called Stepping Stones by Lucy Nicely. And this is a graphic novel. Excellent book. It's about the main character is a girl who moves with her mom her mom has a new boyfriend. They move to his farm, and she has to not only adjust to a new family, but also to living on the farm and preparing for the farmer's market. This is an autobiographical graphic novel, and the author is currently writing the sequel to it as well. And so Stepping Stones is a good one. That's one we found last year, and we really like that book as well. All right, next thing we'll talk about here, if you've joined us for these other sessions this summer, or if you follow us on social media, you've possibly seen my bee school video. So I kept bees about 5 or 6 years ago and got out of it and decided this year I wanted to get back into it again, and decided I'd take people along for the ride. So I've created this, a new video comes out every 2 weeks. And the idea is that over the course of this year, I'm going to have a year's worth of amateur beekeeping videos that you could share with students during a pollination unit to try to learn more about the importance of pollinators, and in this case, specifically honeybees. And so we're continuing to put those out. We're releasing those on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram every couple weeks. I'm just going to show you my latest video that I made. I have another one coming out tomorrow. This is the one I did last week talking about my hive that is expanding quickly. So I bought 3 hives of bees this year, and I'm down to 1. So beekeeping is one of those things where there's high highs and low lows, and there's a lot of great to it, but it's risky business, and it's not something that's easy. Especially getting hives started from scratch takes a lot of work, and sometimes the bees just don't cooperate. I'm not raising bees, right? I'm keeping bees, and then sometimes the bees decide they don't want to be there, and they leave and they go somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened with me this year. And so my one hive is doing really, really well though. And so you'll get an idea through this video of how quickly this hive has expanded in just about 2 months.
Woo! It is a hot one. It's the first week of July, and even though it's hot, I still have work to do with my beehives. Welcome back to Bee School. Typically, you would never want to check on bees during the rain for the comfort of the bees. They don't like the rain. They're nice and safe and dry and warm inside their hive, so you don't open up the hive during the rain. You typically don't want to check on your beehives in the heat of the day for the comfort of the beekeeper. But, as we all know, sometimes timing just doesn't work out the way we think it will. So, here I am, first week of July. It's probably the hottest day of the year so far, middle of the day, but this is when I have time to check on the bees, so I'm gonna do it. So every time before I get into the hive, I'm gonna just give them a little bit of smoke just to try to kind of calm the bees down. So I typically smoke down below. I'll put a little smoke under the lid, and and then I'll also smoke a little bit into the entrance. Then I'm ready to get into the hive. So if you remember, I put this box on just a couple weeks ago. So this was completely empty, just had empty frames in it about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And you can see, to give you an idea of how quickly this hive is expanding, let's see here. So they haven't started getting into, they're just starting to do some wax on these outer frames. But these center frames look like they are going to be full of honey. Let's see here. Look at that. So you can see here, they are pulling wax, which means that they're making that honeycomb. And you should be able to see in some of those, it looks like they're starting to put a little bit of pollen in a couple of those. So they still got a little bit of ways to go to build out the wax in that frame. But typically bees work from the middle out. So what I think we'll find is that these center frames have a little bit more honey. Yeah, look at that. Okay. So you can see the queen has gotten into the second box. So we have a ring of honey, and then the queen has been laying eggs, and it looks like these have hatched, starting to hatch out, and then the ones on the outer areas are not hatched out yet. So both sides of this frame are almost entirely brood. So these are eggs that will soon be uncapped and start hatching. So you can see all these different bees are kind of monitoring that, taking care of that. The cells that are empty, they clean out. One of the ways to tell if you have a good queen is you want as few empty cells as possible. That means that she's laying very efficiently. So I'm very pleased with this. There's not that many. Right here, these larger cells, those are drones. We talked a couple weeks ago about the difference between male bees, the drone bees, and worker bees. So I can tell right there, that's all drone comb and these larger cells. And then these over here are the worker bees. So the vast majority are going to be the worker bees. Okay, this frame is honey, and you can see there's very light colored honey that the bees are placing into these cells. So this frame is heavy. It weighs a few pounds. You can see this side, they're laying eggs on this side, but this side over here is all honey. And I could tell the second I picked it up that it was going to have a lot of honey in it. So what the bees do is they fan that honey to evaporate the water out of it. And I don't entirely understand how they know, but at a certain point they know that it has the right moisture content. And then they start to cap off that honey, which is this really bright white wax that's going over the top of these cells here. They're starting to cap that honey off to preserve it so that they can eat it during the winter when they need it. As a beekeeper, if I do everything right, I should give the bees the right situation where they can produce enough honey for themselves and then also have enough honey for me to take as well. Here's something interesting too. When I opened up the hive and took the boxes apart, I accidentally tore up some of the comb that the bees had been making. And so here you can see these are bees that are in the larval stage. And so I brought it out of the hive so you can see them because there's no way that they'll hatch now. So that gives you an idea of what the bees look like inside those cells when they're closed up. And then in another week or so, they would have turned in to the bees that we recognize.
All right, so there's the latest bee school episode. So yeah, I'm get pretty nerdy about honeybees. They're fascinating creatures, and you know they're the only insect that produce a product that we consume. And so There's not to mention they help in the production of many specialty crops we would not have in our diets if bees did not pollinate those crops. And so definitely relevant to specialty crop production, not just because of making honey, but also because of their pollination efforts there as well.
Okay. All right. We're going to move on to our next activity, which is called plant maze. And this is all looking at phototropism. So the idea that plants are going to follow the sun, the light of the sun. They need, once they're germinated and they start sprouting those leaves, they are looking for the sun so that they can go through photosynthesis and create their food. So our plant maze, it is taking in consideration this idea of students designing a maze in a shoebox to see how long it's going to take for their plants to reach the top. So we suggested in this activity for students to use pea plants or pea seeds because they germinate and grow pretty quickly compared to many other different plants, but you can definitely try a variety of different seeds and different plants. And that could just be part of your inquiry is students trying to determine which plants grow towards the light better, or all of that. And so we have them making a prediction, and then with their different boxes or shoe boxes, they would on this first sheet draw their design, and then they would put their box together. So you would have a couple different levels or a couple different floors in there, and cut holes in there so that you would have the maze for your plant to grow up through. Then what you would do is on this second worksheet over on the right hand side of your screen, what you're looking at is for students to chart their plant's growth. So we're looking at collecting data and making observations. So they have their original design. They would redraw it in the box on this second student worksheet. And what you would do is every X amount of days that you have determined, so if it's every 5 days or every 7 days, you would mark that. And so in this first check, in the round circle, the key first check, you would say maybe 7 days since planting, and your student would choose a color, let's just say blue. And then they would grow, or they would draw in blue how much their plant has grown. So then let's say, they're going to close it back up. They've made their observations. They've recorded their data. They're closing their box back up. We're going to wait another 7 days. So in the second check, they're going to write, it's been another 7 days, or now it's been 14 days since planting. And let's just say they're going to use green now. So when they open their box up, whatever growth of the plant has been, whatever growth there's been since their first check, they would use then the green color, whatever color they choose, to draw that. So then by the end of this, they should see that every time they checked, there was a different amount of growth. And they'll be able to make that observation by seeing the different colors that they used when tracking their data. And so some students may have a hard time. Their plants may not work as well, and some may have a really great plant that is working really well. And so that's just the idea of this, is to see what your plant does and watch it grow towards the sunlight. So I do want to show a quick video that shows this idea of phototropism and plants growing towards the sunlight. So let me play this real quick. Okay, so that's a really quick video that just shows this idea that the plants are growing towards the light. You know, they rely on photosynthesis for them to be able to create their food and grow. And so that's just a quick video that you can use. It's just a channel on YouTube called G-Phase, and there's actually a lot of really cool videos, like you can see on the screen right now. There's a lot of time lapses that show the germination of different seeds and the way that their roots grow and how quickly they grow and all of that. And obviously it takes a long time for plants to grow and germinate. But these are time-lapse videos that show like that cross section so you can easily see it. So that's our phototropism activity, our plant maze activity that you can do in your classroom. And again, like I said, you can make this into an inquiry lesson and use different types of seeds for different types of plants and see how that works. And you're going to want to make sure that you have some sort of natural light if you're in a classroom that has a lot of lights. Otherwise, you may want to invest in some different plant lights to help with this activity, just to give it that little extra boost if you are in a classroom that doesn't have a lot of light in there. So that's our plant maze activity.
Stephanie, there was a question came up about what things you could grow in your plant maze. And so you could use just about anything for this. I would recommend, I've done it with peas, and peas go fast because they want to climb anyway. And so if you're looking to not draw this out for weeks and weeks, I did it with peas and it took 10 days for them to start poking out of the top. And so I recommend those. If you want to make it even faster, if you take your pea seeds and soak them in just plain water for about 6 to 8 hours and then plant them, they will germinate much, much faster and start that process even sooner. So again, it'll work with a variety of different crops, but yeah, a plant that wants to climb already is going to do it much faster, essentially. Yep. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit. I wanted to give you a bit of a tour, I guess, of a specialty crop farm. And so if you've heard me talk before, I've probably referenced the fact that my wife and I have a small specialty crop farm. And so I took some pictures yesterday of what it looks like here towards the end of July. I wanted to share those with you and just kind of talk a little bit about our farm. The last 2 weeks, we've been talking about row crops and primarily talking about corn and soybeans. And you can see in the background of my pictures, we are literally surrounded by corn and soybean farms. And so if you think about the average size farm in Illinois, it's about 370 acres is average. And obviously there's some that are much bigger and some that are smaller. The farm that my wife and I run, and this is my wife's full-time job, is running this farm. The entire farm, production-wise, is about a half an acre. So teeny tiny farm that my wife is making a living off of this very small plot of land. And so, you know, it's a good example of there's a lot of different ways to farm and a lot of different ways to market products that you farm. And context is so very, very important. And so we're able to do this on a really small amount of land because of the crops that we're growing, because we found a market for crops that can grow well on this small acreage. And so I wanted to kind of introduce you to that a little bit. So we farm with these beds, and so you can see where I have these T-posts driven in, and so there's 3 beds there next to each other with these T-posts in the ground. And so our beds are 30 inches wide and about 50 foot long, and so our farm is about 60 of these 50-foot long beds makes up our farm essentially. And so we farm primarily cut flowers, and so we sell fresh cut flowers. You can see in the picture here, the T-posts have netting attached to them to trellis the flowers so they can grow up through it. Again, for that phototropism, but also many flowers will want to right themselves. And so if the wind is blowing them around, their stems will get really curvy. And so if we provide some trellising, it keeps the stem straight and again, keeps us to have a marketable crop there. On our farm, we use a lot of this stuff called landscape fabric, which is this black fabric you can see. We have it lining the beds, and then also the plants are actually planted directly into that landscape fabric. And primarily we use that for to control weeds. So Stephanie, if you want to go to the next slide here, I may have you come back to this one, but so here's a close up here on the left. This is a bed of a flower called Lisianthus. So we plan ahead what spacing we want, and we use a propane torch and we but we burn holes in the plastic at the right spacing. And then we lay this plastic down and we use, they're called sod staples that are about 10 inches long. We hammer those in the ground and then that holds the fabric down and allows us to plant directly into it. You can also see there's this black line and these little blue toggles here. So each of our beds has drip irrigation in it. So Natalie talked with her popcorn that they kind of let nature take its course. When you only have a half acre to grow on, we are doing everything we can to make nature work for us. And so we're using drip irrigation. There's thin plastic lines. Each bed has 2 of them, and they have a teeny tiny little hole every 4 inches. And so each hole, when we're running that system, each hole lets out about a half gallon of water per hour. So we can basically determine how much water we need to add to each bed, depending on how much rain we've had. We've had a lot of rain this month, and so I don't think I've turned on this irrigation in probably 4 to 6 weeks because we've just had so much rain. We also have a couple hoop houses. So growing under, it's called protected culture. This allows us to control the climate even more. Again, we want to work with nature, but we're trying to let nature work with us as well. And so for our high dollar crops, we grow them in hoop houses because we want to create the most ideal growing condition we can for them. So this hoop house here, we had our tulip crop was in here this winter and the spring, and currently it's full of dahlias, which are just starting to come on. So you can see right here, this is what's called a dinner plate dahlia. And the flower is literally the size of a dinner plate. Again, thinking about our most profitable crops grown in our hoop house, the cut flower market is in chaos right now because of all sorts of supply chain related things with COVID. Cafe au lait dahlias, which is what this is, retail cost is probably $5 to $8 a stem right now on dahlias. And so, again, it's a very, very different market than what you might think of with row crop production when you're doing something like this specialty crop or specialty cut flower production. All right, Stephanie, if you want to go to the next slide there. We also are starting to transition our farm to growing more and more perennials. So, annuals, we have to replant every single year. Perennials would grow year to year, and we don't have to continue to replant those. And so one of the goals that we've had is to try to spread out our workload across the year instead of having June, July, and August be so much work. We want to kind of spread that out. So perennials are one way to do that so that we don't have to keep doing all that planting and replanting and flipping beds over to the next crop. We just have certain beds that are going to grow each year. And so this was originally our perennial field right here. I talked last week about cover crops. And so the 2 light colored green beds here on the middle and then on the far right, those are planted in a buckwheat cover crop. We have actually started transitioning these perennials to another spot because we would like to put another hoop house on this location soon. Most of our farm is on a slight south facing hill. And so we have very little space that's flat. And so this just happens to be the flat spot. And so we're going to put another hoop house up there in the next year or so. I didn't want to leave the soil bare. I wanted it to have living roots in there. I wanted something to cover the soil to reduce erosion. Buckwheat is a really fast growing cover crop and also one that flowers and benefits pollinators. And so my honeybees can actually drink nectar from the flowers before I mow it down and plant something else there. The picture on the right is our peony field. Peonies take 3 to 5 years to come to production. And so you can see on the right there, we've got about 50 peony plants that are in full production. And then on the left, those were just planted this year. And we're going to take care of them and wait another 3 years or so. And then we should have about 100 peony plants that we'll harvest in May. Typically, we harvest our peonies. All right, Stephanie, if you want to go to the next one. All right, the last thing I'll talk about is our farm also grows microgreens. And so it's funny, when we lived in town, I had a big garden and I kept making it bigger and bigger and finally convinced my wife, we need to start a farm. We need to move out to the country and get more area. And then I discovered microgreens, and I grow microgreens in a grow room in my basement. And so I didn't even need all that land. I could have grown microgreens in my basement the whole time. But microgreens are a really interesting crop. And so they're teeny tiny versions of plants you would normally grow all the way out. So for instance, this tray here on the right has broccoli, arugula, cabbage, kohlrabi, and that might be it, I guess. So we harvest them 10 days after we plant them. And so this tray here on the left was planted. I took this picture last night. That tray was planted on Saturday morning. So you can see they're just starting to germinate. And then this tray right here, my wife is probably currently harvesting right now, and that's 10 days old. So we harvest them at that short stage, and then we sell those to grocery stores and restaurants in the central Illinois area. And so, yeah, a really unique crop, definitely a niche market, not something that you can sell, all over the place. You got to find specific markets for that. Is that my last slide there, Stephanie? I'm not sure. Oh, I got one more. So one of the things when you grow, we grow probably close to 100 different crops each year on our half acre. And so we spend a lot of time with marketing. Again, different than if I was growing corn or soybeans, I would know what my market is. I would know what the price is in the market. And it's much different when you're growing a specialty crop. You've got to market your product. And so we spend a lot of time doing that marketing and that technology of having a website and incorporating all those things in there to find a market. We also do some agritourism where we invite people to the farm. And so we've started to kind of experiment with actually dyeing fabrics with our flowers. So again, finding the right varieties that work for this. And so you can see here, this was our weekend experiment of, it's basically a flower dye sun tea. And so these are a couple different flowers here that we're trying to dye the fabric using this kind of, the sun is warming it up and basically making a dye out of the flowers and water in there. We also do a number of different classes. One of the classes that we did this week was flower pounding, where you actually hammer flowers into fabric to dye them. So again, pulling in that agritourism allows us to, again, make money off of a really, really small part of land, small plot of land. And so a lot of different markets that are coming out of really, when you think about it, a teeny tiny area that to some people make it look like just kind of a big garden, but is actually a farm that's producing a lot of products for a pretty wide area. So anyway, that's my specialty crop farm. Again, very, very different than what you think of when you think about Illinois agriculture, but certainly an area of agriculture that continues to expand and is one that we continue to see more and more specialty crop farms showing up here in Illinois and trying to make a go at it and find their own unique markets for some unique crops. And so we're just one teeny tiny example of a lot of farms that are trying to do that.
Yeah, Ben, I just want to give my 2 cents in that I went to the flower pounding class that his wife Audra hosted, and it was so much fun. And I have beautiful towels now that I just absolutely love. And if you have a stressful work environment, or you just need to get out and, relieve some stress or anything like that, or just want some pretty towels, it was just so much fun. And that's the only class I've taken so far, and I'll be taking more, but very cool thing. And again, I'm very new to agriculture and everything. So to hear that there are specialty crop farms like this, like Chris said, even though it has its own little niche, they're out there, and there's a lot of different things. A lot of farmers that have, farms like this are different farms that, you would never typically think, oh, that's part of agriculture. So very cool.
Stephanie, I've got a couple
Yep.
questions that I might
Sure.
answer real quick before you transition. Somebody pointed out that there are still parts of Illinois that are very dry that haven't got the rain. If you want to email us, we would be happy to share that rain with you. So we will, we'll spread the love. We'll give you some rain because we've got plenty of it here. So that's a good point. That it's the rainstorms, the rain events that we've had have been severe in some places and have completely missed other places this year. So it's been extremely variable. I had a question about how we sell things, and so we have a number of different markets. One of them is what's called a CSA, which a lot of specialty crop farms, especially vegetable production, have transitioned to the CSA model. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And basically the idea is that people buy a share of your farm and they pay up front for it. And then as the season goes on, you give them the products that come for the farm. So we have a flower CSA where people pay up front for 16 weeks of fresh flower bouquets. And then once a week, we deliver them to them. And then the microgreens we sell wholesale to restaurants and catering services and grocery stores. Primary crops would go outside of specialty crops. So all of our crops would be considered specialty crops, primarily specialty cut flowers, and then the microgreens. And then every year we devote some of our bed space to some experiments essentially and just try out new things. And so one of the things you may have noticed, I had some really tall looking corn in one of the pictures. And I'm experimenting with a corn called Glass Gem, which if you haven't seen, just Google Glass Gem popcorn. There's dozens of different colors on the ear, and they look like polished glass, the kernels do. So if Natalie were still on here, she might steal my idea here. But so we're experimenting with it to see if it can be used for ornamental purposes, or see if we can possibly use it for popcorn as well. So, all right, I think that's all the questions. So thanks for letting me talk a little bit about a unique, weird specialty craft farm.
Sure, yeah. And I do want to say that if you guys all check your chat box, we dropped the Illinois Drought Monitor website so that you can, look at different maps. And this would also be a really cool thing to do in your classroom, is to not only be looking at maps and using that sort of, technology and information in your classroom, but also then to talk about weather patterns and the difference between weather and climate, because that is a huge thing, a very common misconception between what the differences of those are. And so we'll also add the drop monitor on our blog website with all of this information so that you can have that right at your hand. Because I don't know if our chat is enabled or disabled, so it looks like some people aren't getting it. So we'll add that link into the blog right after this so that you guys can do that and either check it out for yourselves or use that as an opportunity to, once again, to talk about the difference between weather and climate in your classroom. So again, our AgMAGs and AgVentures, we have our pumpkin and apple AgMAGs that are brand new. Since 2020. And again, with the AgVenture, the 1-page worksheet that goes along with that to really encourage and help strengthen nonfiction skills, for your students. And then we also have the Seasons and Horticulture AgMAGs, which can only be found online right now. And all of these AgMAGs can be found online. They are interactive. And if you notice on your screen, all 4 of these actually have like a little leaf symbol. When you go online, your students can click that link or the leaf, and it'll either take them to a website with more information, either a farmer's website or an educational website, or even a video. So then again, you can use these for primary and secondary sources when you're teaching that and having students utilize those in your classroom. So our AgMAGs are ready and available. And for any of the AgMAGs that are in print, don't forget that you can contact your ag literacy coordinator and get free classroom sets for your classroom. And that is on our website as well, where you can find that information. Don't forget, we do have our Get a Grant workshop coming up. Our summer book club is already passed and we already started it. And so thank you for any of you in the audience who signed up for that. We're super excited. We hope you got your books. You should have gotten them last week, or at least by now, and have started reading. So those will be coming up. You'll be getting emails for that. And then on August 5th at 10 o'clock in the morning, I will be hosting the Get a Grant workshop. The URL is right there at the bottom, IAITC.co/Get a Grant, or it will be on the blog page where you can sign up for that. And it's just information about the grants themselves. So we have a book grant and we have a classroom project grant. And so I'm just going to talk about what we're providing for those grants. I have a lot of different lessons to pair with the books for the book grant. I'm going to talk to you about previous winners and how they filled out their grants and, kind of what we're looking for. So it's just information for that, but it will be August 5th at 10 o'clock in the morning. So we are coming to the conclusion of our presentation. So as always, on the left side of the screen, there's a snip of our blog page. And the very first link is going to be the reflection. And so when I end this, it should automatically take you there, or you can just go to our blog and click on the teacher training tab and then go to specialty crop summer teacher training, July 20th and 27th, or you could type in this small URL, the the IAITC.co/June 15th. There's a variety of ways to get here. So click on that reflection, fill it out, and we will mail you your materials for next week. It's going to be our final presentation next week. And so we are excited for all of you guys who have been with us, and we're excited to give you your very final box. And then again, if you notice on that snip from our blog, the link just underneath it would be to fill out the Get a Grant workshop to join us for that. So there is all of that. And again, as always, our blog beyondthebarndoor.wordpress.com has a ton of information, a ton of resources, all of our videos, all of the bee school videos and the gardening videos, tons and tons of stuff are on there. So please utilize it. It's all free and everything's on there, PDF, easy to print. Of course, www.agintheclassroom.org is our main website where you can find the AgMAGs, the interactive AgMAGs, and information for your ag literacy coordinator. And again, all of our resources are on there as well. And then follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for any updated information, any challenges that we're doing, anything like that. We're posting stuff all the time for you guys. So thanks once again for joining us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just see if we have any more chats.
I got a comment that the link is disabled. And so I'm currently fixing that right now. And so if you just give me literally 30 seconds, I will get that fixed. And then you may have to just refresh your page and it should work just fine. So I'm clicking update right now. So it should be there in just moments.
All right. Yeah. So if you're already there, go ahead and hit refresh and hopefully that worked. We're going to leave this open for another minute just to see if there's any other questions. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us. All of the familiar names that we see joining us each week, we thank you so much. And then we're hoping that you guys all sign up so you get your box of goodies for our very final 2021 summer teacher trainings. So thank you guys so much. I'm not seeing any other questions, Chris. Are you seeing anything?
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. This was great.
Yep. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and we will see you guys next week, same time. All right. Bye-bye.